Right, so amidst all the distraction with confetti and Hugh Edwards, in amongst all of that Murdoch-engineered censorship of actual, real, important news that's been buried away, and one of the biggies, of course, that's got a lot less attention than it should have done has been a certain former Prime Minister still to hand over those very important WhatsApps lying around on his old ministerial phone, dating to before May of 2021. He had until 4 p.m. on Monday to hand them over, of course, so why hasn't he done it? Well, apparently he's forgotten how to unlock it. He's forgotten the passcode to get into it. This is right up there with the dog ate my homework, but now he's not so much the lackadaisical schoolboy, love that word, doesn't get enough use, he was literally in charge of the country. But as luck would have it, they now have a way in, as the government has found a record of his PIN number. You mean he wrote it down then? It just happened to be lying around somewhere. Makes you wonder what else he's had to write down in case he'd forgotten it too, doesn't it? Did they find it in one of those diaries along with a list of his kids' names and their birthdays in case he ever lost track? A copy of his pro-Brexit speech along with the other one that he didn't read out where he would have come out against that. Nuclear codes, God forbid he forget those. Better write them down as well, eh? But yeah, apparently the PIN number for his phone has now been obtained, and so now they're hoping they can turn it on and access the data on it without it accidentally getting wiped. What's on it then? Well, it's hoped it'll contain group chat messages as well as one-to-one conversations with other ministers at the time, along with top civil servants like the always seemingly involved in things somewhere, Simon Case. It covers the period in time when the pandemic was at its height, when the decisions made in government were the most important and carrying the greatest ramifications. So it'll give us surely an impression of what the government was prioritising at that time, a snapshot in time, as it were. Were they really keeping us safe, therefore? Were they really committed to hands, face, space? Or was it more when it's time to party, we'll party hard, come on over to Boz's, bring a suitcase of drinks whilst you're at it? Whatever is on it, we know as fact at this moment in time that 220,000 people lost their lives during the pandemic, and we need to know whether that was preventable. The families of those lost loved ones deserve to know whether everything was done to avoid their deaths, or whether they were needlessly lost, and if so, well, criminal proceedings must surely follow. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves here. This inquiry is going to rumble on until 2026, after all. Despite the demands and now legal ruling to hand it all over, the lawyers who currently have possession of that phone ain't going to do it unless it can be securely opened, they say. But let's face it, they bent over backwards to avoid handing the phone over because who knows who else is incriminated on it. All eyes ended up on Rishi Sunak, of course, after he, on behalf of the government, stupidly decided to take his own inquiry to court, because nothing makes someone look guiltier in government than taking a legal panel headed by a highly qualified lawyer and indeed judge themselves, telling the world and their dog that the Prime Minister is trying to restrict his own independent investigation. He was probably stamping his tiny feet, squealing, "There's nothing on it, definitely nothing about Eat Out to Help Out. It won't stop inflation or stop the boats coming over, you know. It'll let out all the evils of the Tory party if you do this, like some kind of right-wing Pandora's box. Bozo's box. Herein lies everything that could destroy the Tory party." Oh, if only that were true. Eat Out to Help Out, incidentally, is a focus of the investigation. It does fit into this time frame. We already know Sunak lied about following the science when the chief scientific advisors were involved, because they weren't. He never asked them. But I covered that in another video, so I'll link to that one at the end. However, there's ample reason, therefore, that Sunak won't want any of this to come out. He'll be lucky if he's still PM by the time it's reported anyway. However, the allegations are going nowhere, and the speculation around them will persist through the next election campaign. Who knows, though? Maybe we'll get a leak. Another interesting nugget that could be covered on this phone is that it covers the period when Boris Johnson was apparently ill and near death from the virus himself. So it will be interesting to see if there was any activity on it going on from that time as well that might imply otherwise. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? So anyway, thank goodness somebody has found a way in. Thank goodness a record of the PIN was found somewhere. Luckily for all of us, we should be able to get in. The disappointment will be if we find out that Bozo deleted everything and the only thing we actually find out is that he only has a score of 4% on Wordle. Clearly they don't cop up puzzles in Latin. In all seriousness, though, Johnson's missing the deadline to hand over his phone as per instruction of a legal ruling now puts him in contempt of court. So the other question that's been going around this week is, why hasn't he been arrested yet then for that? Is it because he himself doesn't have the phone that he's hiding behind his lawyers, that his excuses have given him a bit of grace? But that is now over since they can open the phone. It's all a bit stinky, and if any of us were in contempt, we'd have had the old bill on our doorsteps to march us off into custody by now, so why not him? Again, it's one rule for them and one rule for us, it would seem. Of course, like some over-the-hill, slightly weird-looking version of the Fast and the Furious, Johnson can rely on the family to come along and launch a defence, and inexplicably the mainstream news channels always allow this and keep going along with that. Johnson's dad, Stanley, was once more deployed to Good Morning Britain, and it was a love-in between the presenters and Johnson, reminiscent of Phil and Holly having selfies taken with Bozo a while back on the This Morning programme. Why are they always so pleased to have this blasted family on their programmes, and all they do when they come on is jump to the shambling Yeti's defence? And of course that is exactly why he was there, to answer questions about these developments with the COVID inquiry. But on no planet anywhere can he be considered either an informed or an impartial guest to discuss this matter. Boris Johnson sent his dad out to bat for him, and they lapped it up, and that's quite pathetic, and it's no wonder Ofcom have received a shed load of complaints in relation to that. The phone needs handing over, end of. It wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if we find out its contents actually have been wiped, though of course that will open up another can of worms, given the phone hasn't been switched on for months, allegedly, left unused, not because it doesn't work or the contents of it were already being requested and needed to disappear Lord Bethel style. It was because Johnson hadn't changed his phone number in 15 years, and the phone as a result was deemed a security risk. Still, thank goodness we got Brexit done and binned off Jeremy Corbyn. I'm sure it was all worth it. Thanks for watching. Please do like, share and subscribe to the channel if you found this useful and don't want to miss the next video. New content published daily. Meanwhile, as my video recommendation to keep you a little bit longer, here's a bit more about why Rishi Sunak might want this phone dropped into a deep dark hole somewhere, as his Eat Out to Help Out idiocy came out. And, well, I'll catch you on the next video, I hope. Cheers, folks.